this next session on cybersecurity. This is a very important topic. We want to make sure that these new systems that we're putting in are secure, and they've been testing out the vulnerabilities and finding the weaknesses and finding ways that they can tackle it and fix it. So I'm going to just hand it over to them while y'all start and you start talking. First, I'll introduce them really quickly. We have Dr. Raju. He is at the ULL, and if you've been following us for a really long time, we gave them an award many years ago for a project that they had with Idaho National Lab, and of course, then that's why we invited Idaho National Lab to join. They have cybersecurity experts, and we also have Bart Phillips, who has been working with ULL on some other projects with cybersecurity, and he is with Basecamp Renewables. And the three of them, they know each other very well. They've all been working together. They may not have seen each other in person before, but these days we have people we work with for years and never really get to meet in person, so this is a nice little reunion we have for them. So I'm going to pass it off to you, Dr. Raju. I'll let you get started while I tee up your presentation.
Well, good morning, everyone, again. It's great to be here. I am Raju Gottumukkala. I'm an associate professor within the College of Engineering at UL Lafayette. And I also had a CIPHERS lab, Cyber Physical Human Systems lab. And I also had research for one of the Informatics, was one of the research institute, the Informatics Research Institute. So first I'll let my co-panelists introduce themselves, and then we can get started.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. My name is Bart Phillips with Basecamp Renewables, which is a company we started a few years ago. We saw opportunity from the EPC standpoint and development to bring renewables to the market, both in the commercial and the industrial side. So, my background, to be honest with you, my wife laughs at me. I'm a military aviator for 12 years, flying helicopters, too tall to fly anything else. Moved into the civilian world in logistics, and then saw the opportunity on the renewable energy side, because I'm a systems engineer at heart, have a master's in leadership and human resource development with human capital. So as we sit at this table, I feel like I'm part of a Marvel movie with these two gentlemen up here who are truly the white hats from a cybersecurity standpoint. My role, at least with Basecamp, is for integration and bringing it to market and speaking to customers and trying to find areas to bring it all together to make it work. And we're proud of some of the accomplishments we've had just as a company just in the short years with our engineers putting in some proprietary technology in our DC charging stations, where it truly is focused around the cybersecurity standpoint, because you've got, when you have these, it's communication both ways. So, and you can't trust anyone, to be honest with you. So, real quick, thank you for letting me be a part of this, and I'll hand it back down to Griffin.
Okay. Griffin?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Griffin Egner. I am a cybersecurity researcher at Idaho National Labs. It's a Department of Energy national laboratory. We're kind of known for nuclear energy, but what we also do is we do critical infrastructure cybersecurity as part of our National and Homeland Security Director. And part of that, we're as he said, we're white hat hackers. We call ourselves kind of bank robbers for hire, right? And Department of Energy and other various federal governments, or our federal government, basically helps us inform industry and stakeholders of ways we can get into systems as well as how to make them better. So we kind of make it a career of telling people that their baby is ugly, but here's how we can make it a better product that's safer for the American people to use, as well as keeping people and our national grid and energy supply secure.
Fantastic. And are we doing slides? Can we do slides or?
Yeah, just
Okay,
let
so
me
you're
know.
gonna-
Let me know and I can advance them for
Okay,
you.
so why don't you go ahead?
Yeah,
first?
so sorry. So I think first slide we had, what we have at Idaho National Labs is our EV infrastructure lab. We call it EVIL. It's kind of a funny acronym. Anyone familiar with the government or any types of industry, corporate projects, we love our acronyms. Part of this, right, it's a big facility that we have, but as you see on the left, we have our bidirectional EV charging. That is something we're currently doing right now. We also have our human systems lab. We do battery testing as well, and innovation and development. And then on the far right side, right, that's where some of our additional magic happens, and why our national lab space is a great place to kind of prove and come up with new concepts to help industry and OEMs and stakeholders advance, right? And it's our power systems and digital real-time grid simulation. So as part of our bidirectional EV charging, right, if we find potential issues or concerns or any type of attack scenario or security concerns, right, we can simulate and scale those attacks out in simulation and prove scalable impacts and results as to why this is an issue. It's not a one charger issue, it's a whole fleet of charger issues. It's a spec issue, it's a standardization issue, right? And we try to inform industry and stakeholders of best practices, recommendations to create secure by design fundamentals and standards. So part of our EV testing that we've done historically, right? So we just wrapped up some of our advanced charging system characterization for the extreme fast charge hardware. So you may be familiar with extreme fast charging. It's where you need to charge your EV charger, I think it's 80% in under 20 minutes. And it charges about I think they say 20 miles per minute is the average. You're pumping lots of power into the vehicle. We have grid interaction and evaluation with the Power and Energy Systems Lab on site, and we also have a virtual tour of EVIL as well. It's a link, kind of a lot to type out. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to see the actual virtual tour. I can share that with you directly. Next slide. So part of it, right, we're not just going to tell you what's bad, right? We're also going to try and come up with some other goodies, right? And so we've been working with a couple other laboratories and our federal partners as well to look into wireless power transference. So we talk about potential solutions, right? I believe Mr. Derrick brought up a great point of there's issues with having plug-in charging at multi-unit dwellings, right? But potentially wireless power transference can be done. It's fancy words for wireless charging of your cell phone. You can do it with a vehicle, and so you can basically put those in underneath parking spots and just drive up and park, and it'll charge your vehicle. If you see sub-bullet point there, we also have in-motion dynamic wireless power transference that's being tested, and we're rolling out better ways of being able to potentially accomplish that someday, where then you wouldn't even need to plug in or stop to charge. You could have entire highways where you have dynamic wireless power transference and you're charging as you're driving on the road. We do a lot of cyber physical security and high power charging infrastructure testing. So everything is consequence driven, right? We want to basically be led by what are the major impacts, right? We create, target vector prioritizations, right? Where we look at a total attack surface, try to find what are the largest impacts and scalable concerns for the grid. And let's figure out solutions for that. Next one. This is part of the solution, right? So this is one example, but this is types of things that we try to always come up with. So when we find issues, right, we just saying, hey, there's an issue doesn't help anything, right? What we've come up with is it's a full-on detection and a mitigation system for chargers, right? And right now it's a standalone security implemented system, but it can detect issues with state of charge, initiating charges, faulty, tampering, and can help prevent against issues, say, with one charger, right? Initiating just power off, right? So you're pumping, full DC fast charging into a vehicle and you immediately stop it, right? You have instantaneous load shed. How can we protect against that, right? And it can implement a tiered approach to taper off that power in a responsible and reliable manner. Instantaneous load shed of one charger, not really the biggest issue, right? But if you have it against multiple, that's where the scalability and simulation comes into play. Next slide. This is where it's getting really fun. So this is our new research, right? So we're at Idaho National Labs, part of EV SALAD, so EV Secure Architecture Laboratory Demonstrations, funded by DOE CSER, the CSER SALAD, all right? We're tasked with finding best practices and recommendations and sharing those out with industry, right? So this is a new thing that we're doing right now. We're looking specifically at vehicle to grid and vehicle to home, and it's abbreviated V2X, right? And right now we have a Fermata bidirectional vehicle to grid. We've got a Borg Warner. This is a medium duty, heavy duty bidirectional charger for bidirectional buses, big fleet vehicles. And then we also have the vehicle to home load for the Ford bidirectional charger. Accompanying it, we've got the supporting vehicles of Nissan Leafs. Our vehicle to grid, we are repurposing a giant Bitrode battery cabinet, and we have it in loop, so the energy goes right back to the INL power grid, so we don't have to dissipate into heat, which is big waste. And then with our Ford, we also have a Ford F-150 Lightning in the lab as well. Always trying to expand it and always trying to work with, trying to find more partnerships, but the end goal of this is to find potential concerns and flaws and that are universal, right, to bidirectional charging, because if we all think as a bad guy for a little moment, right, with extreme fast charging, right, it's one direction, right, from the grid to the vehicle, right? There's concerns with, what happens if we draw too much power, right? Now with bidirectional, you've now doubled potentially your attack surface of potential effects, right? Because now, if I'm a bad guy, can I push power back up to the grid when it's not needed, right? And so we're trying to look at those types of design considerations and inform people on secure by design fundamentals so that when vendors and integrators are developing new ways to install these and develop new products, right? You're developing a product that has security at the beginning, the inception of the design, and not as an added feature at the end. Next slide. We do assessments and demonstrations, right? So we work with vendors doing vulnerability assessments. So there's some ROI back to vendors that want to help participate in our research and benefit overall EV adoption in industry, right? And then we demonstrate it to our stakeholders. We invite utility companies, we invite government partners that are rolling out funding packages for these, and we also invite vehicle owners as well as university partners. We've done light-duty EV charging, heavy-duty EV charging, both to represent both the regular consumer as well as the industry fleet vehicle side of things. Next slide. And then I am going to shamelessly talk about this very important thing right here. This is a Cyber Auto Challenge in Cybertruck, right? This is a great opportunity, and this is, where universities, national labs, and industry are all kind of collaborating into a competition space for undergraduate researchers. They're really undergraduate researchers. They're not just students, they're researchers that can be valuable assets to any team that's trying to tackle these issues, right? And these students are getting hands-on experience of how to hack into and find the security flaws and fix them, right? And so it's always open. There's lots of engagement for anyone that's in this space, trying to find new talent that's coming into the market of students that are coming in with the skills that are needed and ready for the job market. So please feel free to look into these. These are competitions that are directly designed to help fix some of these issues that we talk about today. And I'll pass it over to Dr. Raju.
Well, thank you so much for the overview of the lab and the activities that you're doing. So I'm from UL. I had a lab called the Cyber Physical Human Systems Laboratory. And the focus is designing intelligent systems that are human-centric. So the idea is that when you look at these vehicles and charging stations or medical devices or anything, you not only want to design them to be safe and secure, you want them to be more user-friendly. You want them to be cost-effective, right? So that's kind of the focus of my lab. And cybersecurity systems research is a very big component of what we do in my lab. And can you go to the next slide, please? So I'll speak to the cyber physical systems component here. So the R&D, so we primarily focus on a lot of R&D. So we have undergrad students, grad students, MS, masters, and PhD, and we have my collaborator Farzad here and some students that have taken my classes and worked with me. So we do a lot of R&D and so on. But in collaboration with Idaho National Lab, one thing we've done is we've established a big test bed for testing and evaluating actual real-world systems, right? So it's not just theory, like reading papers and writing simulations, but bringing the commercially available systems, whether it is the mobile apps, whether it is the charging stations, vehicles, whatever, or the SCADA systems for power plants, like solar power plants and so on. So we've established this real-world test bed where we kind of have the commercially used systems, and we also have the tools, right, that look at the hardware security, looking at the software, looking at the design aspect, right, very holistically. And thank you for our outstanding collaboration with Idaho National Lab. I think we had great students who have benefited from this collaboration that are now working at NASA, working at General Motors, Ericsson, and also one of my students, Jake, who's interning with Idaho National Lab. So that's one of big focus of our lab is cybersecurity R&D. Our focus is, again, design of these cyber physical systems that are very human-centric. Can you go to the next slide, please? And we also do a lot of AI, machine learning-based approaches for anomaly detection and so on. So this is a cybersecurity test bed that we've created in collaboration with Idaho National Lab and DOE. And the idea is if you take charging stations or vehicles, they are basically computers on street, and they are connected to the internet, right? And there are many points of entries into your vehicle. If you think about your smartphone, if you think of a USB that you're plugging into your car, right? So all of these are all entry points. And it's okay if it is just your car, and maybe you have to worry about your personal data and your security. But the problem with these electric vehicles and charging stations is that they're actually connected to the grid, right? And number one. Number two, also people are dependent on it, right? I mean, for example, let's say you're trying to get out of harm's way during evacuation, for example, right? And you want to make sure that all the charging stations are operational, right? Otherwise, it's going to create problems, when people are trying to get out of harm's way. So these systems are very interconnected, and we kind of looked at different problems related to cybersecurity, whether it is looking at better vehicle identification, looking at integrity of the different sensors, the ECUs. Can you develop automated ways to analyze their security and so on? So can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so I just want to talk about a couple of, kind of 3 different examples to give you an understanding of the type of work that my students have done working with me. One of the problems that we worked on is, security and anomaly detection. So if you look at literature, there's a lot of work on to apply machine learning for detecting any anomalies, right? So someone is trying to hack into, let's say, the CAN bus of your car, or your vehicular network, right? Or your charging station. So if you look at literature, there's a lot of anomaly detection-based approaches, but they only work well when you see a big uptick in the signal, right, in the network traffic and so on. So one of my students, he kind of worked on this problem of, okay, what if the attacker tries to make this look like normal traffic, right? Very low rate injection attacks. Can you detect them, right? So we kind of worked on this problem using, the infrastructure that we had, and we had a paper and thesis that came out of this. So anomaly detection, right? So the cool thing about this AI-based approach is it can actually automate some of these attack and detecting any kind of suspicious activity, right? With human in the loop. So next slide, please. Also, we spent a lot of time improving vehicle identification and authentication, like how you basically facilitate better secure communication between the vehicle and the charging station, right, whether it is wired or wireless. And we've developed kind of security protocols, authentication protocols, ways to identify the integrity of these ECUs. Like, if someone goes and tampers with one of the electronic control units, right, can you actually detect them? So this is another problem that we worked on. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit more about something that we've been discussing with Anne and DOTD and INL, is to kind of do training. That is one thing that I'm focusing more. While we can do all this awesome research in our lab and train our students, we want to educate the actual users of this system better. And I think there is a gap. I mean, if you take some of the network operators that are responsible for the cyber security of the entire system, right? Charging station, your grid and all of that. I mean, that's fine. I think they go through the training and, for basically managing and operating your charging station networks. But some of the users, especially operators of charging stations, and I've looked at some of the applicants that came to the OTD, and a lot of these are not technical people, right? I mean, think of these as gas station owners, right? So how do you explain them about the importance of cybersecurity, right? I mean, they understand physical security well, right? Because they have surveillance cameras, they have security alarms, and they kind of have the cash. They kind of monitor the cashiers to see that, make sure that he's not stealing money, all of that. So they have all of this figured out, right? So whereas cybersecurity is something that they're really not aware of, right? Because it's kind of they don't worry about it, right? So how do you make it? How do you create this really nice training program to kind of make them inform, right, about the importance of cybersecurity and what they can do about it, right? I mean, if you're part of a university, if you work for a state agency, if you're working for a company, we all go through this training program, right, when we are, right, about how to protect your passwords and multi-factor authentication and all of that, depending on role and responsibility. So I think there is a gap. I mean, we looked at the federal training programs, what's offered, and I think there is a gap that we have to fill, So that is something that we're kind of working on. And I have a little summer program, experimental summer internship program this summer, where I just brought in some high school students and some undergrad students to just give them training on cybersecurity to see, how they'll do, by the end of their internship. So that is also something that we're doing, training and education. So I'll stop here, and I guess, Bart, I'll let you moderate this session because you have a better understanding of the actual users of this system. You have the business, side of this charging station. So I'll let you please moderate so we can answer questions.
Yeah, so the reality is, you got guys like this in this space for a reason, okay? What we're concerned, most folks are concerned about, like Derek said in his presentation, you want station reliability, okay? And then from a network operator standpoint, you want communication and visibility into your entire network. And from a user, you want to be able to go and plug in and know that you can just plug in and take care of it. Derek was talking about some things where you just plug in and charge. So there's clearly communication between the vehicle and the charging station, and it crosses boundaries into other parts of the network. There's vulnerabilities in all of those access points. So from a user, you don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about the security features on your phone. You actually get, as a user, we get annoyed when the Norton antivirus stuff keeps popping up on our screen, but it's working in the background. So it is imperative from a systemology standpoint that we have folks like this who are studying this and diving deep into it and understanding all the connection points and vulnerabilities. Raju is exactly right. That's why I'm up here with these guys. They're going to talk to the specifics and the details of the technologies, but from a user and a person who wants to go out and install and support and be a part of the bigger framework, we have to understand the importance of it and bring our engineers to bear with them, and so we achieve some levels of standardization in the space.